the panel discussion, which is going to be on how, well, the program says it's how to realize the agroforestry potential for SDG achievement. But you know, we have a very distinguished panel here, and they could almost talk about anything. Do we want to give them a different challenge? Why don't we ask them to talk about agroforestry, but also consider the role of research? How can research on agroforestry, how can agroforestry, but how can research on agroforestry support the SDGs? So that's really what I'm going to be asking the distinguished panel members to speak about. They will start off by giving you a sort of 4 to 5 minute position that they take on this issue. We're going to go through the whole panel, so listen carefully, and then we're going to open it up to a discussion. This is going to be a dialogue between all of you, the panel and all of you, and then we're going to try, within the next sort of 90 minutes or so, draw out from this some key conclusions, key insights, key guideposts on how agroforestry, and in particular research on agroforestry, that would take too long, and that would be too loud as well. But please, it requires your participation. So maybe I should just briefly go through and explain who you have in the panel. Today's panel is going to focus on Indonesia as a case example for how agroforestry, research in agroforestry can support the SDGs, and how the SDGs can provide a framing for the work that we're looking at. From my extreme left, I was almost going to say in the blue corner, but no, from Australia and ACR, one of our favorites, my personal favorite donor, Tony Bartlett. Next, in row from Bapanas, the National Planning Agency, was responsible for actually charting the course of this country, and so we're really pleased to have him here, Dr. Matilda. Representing FORDA, our hosts here and our close partner, Pa Agustino Tampupulon. The anonymous lady in the middle, I will skip over, no, Sonia Devi, ladies and gentlemen, everybody knows her. And somebody that I've been bumping into in the corridors of power as he shakes up the world, and particularly here in Indonesia, tirelessly championing the rights of indigenous people, Pa Abdon, real privilege to have him here. And somebody we all know and love, and looks after partnerships with all her heart, Dr. Margaret Cromer. One of our panelists is still on the way, and when she comes, we'll briefly introduce her. But let me start with our host, Forda, and ask Pa Agustino to set us rolling.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our DG, Dr. Henry Bastaman, is not able to join with you here for ICRAF Science Week 2015 because in the same time there is a meeting with the NGOs based in Bogor. So he sent his regret to you all, and then he asked me to replace his position as a panelist here. Mr. Chair, maybe can start with as you know that the SDGs are a proposed set of targets relating to future international development. It consists of 17 proposed goals, 169 proposed targets, and 304 proposed indicators, which is prepared by Open Working Group on SDG. So the final document of SDGs was prepared for adoption in the UN Sustainable Development Summit, 25 to 27 September this year in New York, USA. So I think the agroforestry is very closely relates to Goal 15. Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and help and reverse land degradation and help biodiversity loss. That's the very close relates to the Goal 15. But also that the agroforestry may also support Goal 1 and poverty, Goal 2, and hunger and achieve food security. Goal 6, sustainable management of water. Goal 7, sustainable and modern energy, especially renewable energy and biomass energy. Goal 12, sustainable consumption and production patterns related to the green economy and low carbon economy. And Goal 13, combating climate change and its impacts. So agroforestry is in line with the SDGs goals, I think. So as we know that the agroforestry is well accommodated in CRP 6, forestries and agroforestry, that it focuses on livelihoods, landscapes, and governance. So these three kinds of things is very hard to point out to explore the SDGs, especially to enrich the SDGs proposal. So in relation, sharing the landscape is much more environmentally sound forest lands management, needs low inputs and technology, and more sustainable. So sharing, I think, is very important here if we relate it to SDGs. Agroforestry practices in Indonesia have been proven suitable for socio-economic and cultural conditions of people living in or near forests in order to meet their basic needs and their income revenues. Moreover, agroforestry can be applied for achieving food security, energy security, and improving environmental quality of degraded forest land. As we know, give some inputs to SDGs draft before launching on the end of September 2015. ICRAF may suggest several points. I think this is very important. The important roles of agroforests for food security and income security. So it's very also the nexus of food security and energy security. I think we have to adopt this very important point. Yeah. And also designation of 12.7 million hectares of forest for social forestry, consisting of community forestry in Indonesia. This is in Indonesia case. Yeah. Customary forest or hutan adat, community forest, hutan rakyat, and community forest plantation. For applying community-based forest management to all forest areas in order to help forest land conflicts and to increase community livelihood. I think we have to increase the access of local people to the forest so they can get benefits from the forest resources. This is the now equitable and inclusiveness of the forest sector in Indonesia. We change the paradigm from the very exclusive to inclusive forest sector. Also, the number 5, promoting energy security from forest areas, especially bioenergy, bioethanol, in this case, bioethanol, biodiesel, biogas, wood pellets, and charcoal. I think forests, and also agroforestry have important roles in providing sustainable energy in the future to replace the fossil fuel. And 6, I think, promoting agroforest model for forest fire prevention. This is very important now in this situation. If we apply agroforestry in a landscape, I think we can reduce the fuels. We can prevent the wildfires. It's important, I think, the strategy to apply agroforestry especially in the wildland in Indonesia. So this very strategic one, promoting the agroforestry in the wildland in Indonesia in order to prevent the wildfire. Number 7, applying several models that has already been established by ICRAF. A lot of models that's already established by ICRAF in order to improve local livelihood and productive landscape. So the productive landscape here, as I mentioned before, sharing the landscape instead of sparing the landscape. But in order to meet this agenda, ICRAF should propose clear and straightforward indicators to support goals and targets related to forest and agroforestry issues. So this is very important about the the criteria and indicator of the SDG target. So not only the goals and the target, but very clear indicators for the SDGs. Forda has already issued strategic plan of agroforestry research in Indonesia. Here the head of Agroforestry Technique Forest Institute Ciamis, I think it's very close to ICRAF, yeah? We made a very good living document of research agenda for forestry, agroforestry in Indonesia. Several challenges are highlighted, namely poverty, forest land conflict, and forest resource degradation, nexus conservation and development, community involvement in forest management, and anticipation of global climate change. That's the challenges for agroforestry in Indonesia. So even Balai Pelatihan Teknologi Agroforestry Ciamis, Agroforestry Research Institute, under Forda, constantly conduct research on agroforestry on technical issues, silviculture, socio-economic aspects, in here local knowledge, livelihood, marketing, and community-based forest management models. So they are working, Balai Ciamis, in this issue. And also the canopy project, yeah, under collaboration the ICRAF with Forda, canopy, Dr. Rizky Effendi is a project manager. I think is now going for the second year. Yeah, this is pretty good. I think it's a good collaboration between ICRAF and Forda. So, four research topics will be prioritized here from our Forda sites. One is a production and marketing system of community-based agroforestry, community-based forest management on forest area, applying agroforestry practices that is suitable to global climate change. This year, I think we have to design the climate change compatible development strategies. So the interaction between adaptation strategies, mitigation strategies, and development strategies. So the intersection of three kinds of strategies is climate change compatible to development, low carbon development, and resilient development for adaptation and development strategies. And the last one, apply agroforestry practices to support provision of forest services. I think that's from the Forda's point of view about the future agroforestry system in that we are going to research in the short run. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Rafi. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is my most challenging presentations, to make it in 4 minutes, to tell about indigenous people's movement. But I will try. Yeah. So first, I want to introduce Aman to all of you. Aman is an umbrella organization for indigenous peoples in Indonesia. So right now we have 2,302 communities, our member, and we organize the organizations with 108 local chapter and 21 regional chapter, and we have the national office in Jakarta, in Bogor. So we serve our member that's now almost 17 million populations, and 17 million populations from about 70 million indigenous populations here in Indonesia. So from 250 million population. So, and in Indonesia is one of the most progressive country, new country on indigenous people's rights. In our constitutions, in 1945, there is a clear mandate for the state to recognize, respect, and protect indigenous people's rights. But the problem is, 70 years now, we don't have national law to implement that constitutional rights. And when Suharto in power, even he produced the sectoral law that deny indigenous rights. One, the most important thing is National Forestry Law in 1967. This law brought back the Dutch colonial doctrines. If you know that domain verklaring doctrine, that's the colonial doctrines. If you work in Latin America, you will be, or in Philippines, you will be familiar with Regalian doctrine. It's the same. Yeah, the Dutch with the domain verklaring, and in the Philippines, the Regalian doctrines. These doctrines say if peoples cannot provide the evidence, the legal evidence that their land or their territory is not, they don't have evidence, so automatically it's state land. But you know, indigenous peoples, they don't have letter, they don't have map, they only have story, they only have oral traditions. And with this national law, almost all indigenous territory becomes state forest. That's the problem. And after this national forestry law, and then conflict everywhere until now, because as a state forest, and then the government, the Suharto at that time, put forest as a resource of income for development. He gave concessions, logging. After logging, and then HTI, and now oil palm and mining. So each siap jengkal. Every piece of land is now in conflict. So agrarian conflict is the challenge, not only for indigenous peoples, also for ICRAF with agroforestry, because you know, indigenous territory, I think part of the territory is agroforestry. Repong Damar in Lampung, Haminjot, Kemenyan in my homeland, in North Sumatra, that's the very old agroforestry system. And that's become state forest. Even in my homeland, they gave the concessions to forest timber estates in our agroforestry. That's the problem. That's the challenge for ICRAF. How we against this doctrine, domain verklaring. If this doctrine still in our legal systems, there's no place for agroforestry. Come on. When you will develop agroforestry if all things state forest? And state tend to give license to corporations, not to the peoples. The peoples, they just get degraded land at the end. Or asap. Haze. Or poison water, because the company then, the mining company then left, and then they just left with the poisonous land, the poisonous water, and everything. That's happening in Samarinda right now. So that's the challenge, I think, for agroforestry. Most of Indonesia's agroforestry in indigenous land, in indigenous territory. And there is no protections for them. So the tenurial rights, that will be the challenge. And how much we can save if indigenous right protected well? Because now we have the chance to protect indigenous rights because of the the Constitutional Court number 35 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we submit the proposal to Constitutional Court to say that national forestry law against our constitutions, and we won. But the challenge right now, how to bring back the right of indigenous peoples after 40 years, intensively exploited, yeah, by corporations. How? I think that's the challenge right now. We try to start the movement. We call it the participatory mapping movement. Yeah. And then we have now the indicative map for indigenous territory. And you know how much we can, the results, 84 million hectares is indigenous territory. 84 million hectares. And about 44 million hectares is forested land. Forest. Still forest. Yeah. But about 26 million hectares have to be rehabilitated, because it's already degraded by the logging company and so on. So if we see the situations from the SDG perspective, I think this is the peluang, this is the opportunities. Yeah. With 54 million hectares forested land, maybe we can develop the agroforestry still there. We'll need to empower them. Yeah. Empower them through research, through empowerment, through everything. And that will contribute a lot for SDGs. Yeah. Not only for the peoples, but also for the global community, global ecological solutions for our global ecological crisis. No? I think that's why right now we are also fighting to put the what do you call it? To make sure that masyarakat adat in Indonesia accepted by the government as an indigenous peoples in the international systems, you know, because Indonesia will get more from the international community right now if we firmly say that masyarakat adat is indigenous peoples at the international. Yeah. And we have safeguards for that. We put because now indigenous peoples one of the main player for solutions right now. Yeah. So I think that's to challenge ICRAF as a researcher.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you very much.
What you can do with that situation. Yeah. The challenge.
Thanks, Pak Raffi, and also thanks for the invitations of from Pak Ujwal and Bu Sorga and so on. Let me, before Pak Abdon explain about his institutions, please let me explain a little bit about the background of my institutions. I come from Bappenas. Bappenas is the National Development Planning Agency, and we are our office actually responsible for creating a development plan for the whole country, and of course we need to work together as well with the line ministries. And the plans that we created is not only about macro policy, economy, and so on, but also it will include it includes as well about something about environment, forestry, agriculture, including the topics that we talk about. But in this forum, I don't want to be like an expert, because I'm a bureaucrat, and my background also engineer, and I graduated from economy as well. But during my PhD, just tell you a little bit about the story. I was trapped in this situation that I had to live together with the farmers in the deep forest of central Kalimantan, who did their daily life with an agroforestry system. Before I lived together with them, I only thought about agroforestry is just about trees, about agriculture, and only about perikanan itu apa? Fishery. And when I lived together with them about almost 4 to 5 months, and then my perceptions totally changed. I saw that agroforestry is not only about trees and all those things, but this is actually about sustainable production systems at a very site level. And I thought at that time that if we are talking about systems, then we need to consider not only about trees, about agriculture, but also other aspects like social, cultures, and even the whole many parameters that we need to consider if we want to succeed with the agroforest activities. And again, if we are talking about production systems, then we need to also consider about the whole package of the landscapes. It's not only just a project just in one site area, but then I thought at that time, well, if we want to have a success in implementing agroforestry activities, so then the farmers should also consider many aspects about how then they could manage their products, not only just in the upstream level, but also how then they have to consider about how then they to market the products. Otherwise, this is very difficult for them to improve their livelihood or to increase the level of their livelihood. So then, I still remember I discussed with several communities in that areas, and then they really would like to see that the agroforestry system that they implement, it should be enhanced. Not only just talk about agroforestry system, but has to be combined with other aspects, something like small agro-industrial base, something like more business-oriented, rather than just exploiting the natural resources. Of course, it will be sustainable and so on, because they implement it in a more sustainable way, but in the context of improving livelihood, they need to enhance their networks, their connectivity with other players, for example, in the market. And, I'm sorry. One thing that I also noticed during my research at that time, that then because we are talking about systems of the productions and in the big landscapes, there is some things like, I can say that this is the drivers that motivate them to, what I can say, to change the overall ecosystems. Because, you know, the drivers here is very important, because the driver is actually the one that pushed them to influence the performance of the ecosystems, and then they want to improve their livelihood and so on. So what I mean here is that we also need to consider as well the roles of the drivers in this context. And again, if we are talking about SDGs, then, and if you are talking about the system as well, and then if I compare my experience when I did my research, I think if the farmer implement the sustainable production system, and of course 3 principles that they have that they I think automatically have already implemented. First, this is actually the aim, my understanding at the time, this is actually the aim of the agroforestry systems, that first, of course, improving livelihood while maintaining ecological stability, and also it has to be supported by social coherence. That's the main important one. And I think these 3 principles, of course, in line with SDGs. As my colleague mentioned here, that of course there are several goals of the SDGs that relates to this. I think I have tried to list several goals that actually closely linked to the agroforestry activities, from goal 1, goal 2, goal 8, goal 12, 13, and 15. And I think I agree with my colleagues that goal 15 is actually really relevant, but of course it's not. The other goals is also very important. So then, back again to my office role. After I returned back to work, then I involved in the preparations of National Development Plan. And of course, it's not only me creating the plan, but also a lot of people in my office also developed the plans, the sectoral plans, and then integrated to one book. And I think we have produced 3 books for this country for development plan from 2015 and 19. And I just reviewed this morning the books, the 3 books, and then I tried to look at the words agroforestry.
Did you find it, Pak?
I only find it one. one agroforestry word in a very thick books, 3 books in Indonesian's development plan. Only one word, and but I enjoy to see that because at least there is one. But I can also see that there are also some other things related to agroforestry mentioned, as our colleague mentions, and that's good. And this agroforestry word actually is stated under the strategy of improving the what you call it, KPHL, forest management unit for protected areas. So actually, the aim of agroforestry, one is actually to improve the conservation area under the FMU management, and I always forget, and also to enhance non-timber forest product. So there are only 2 objectives mentioned there. And but if I look at again more deeper in the development plan, then I also see that there are many words about agro industry, agro business, agro climate even. Agroclimate. So then I was a little bit confused then, but I tried to make some linkages between these very fuzzy words about agro. And when I look all the wordings about fuzzy words in the documents, and then I still believe there are still some very close linkages between agroforestry and also especially agribusiness and agri-industry. So because, as I mentioned before, that it's like what the farmers state, in my experience when we deal with the farmers in the agroforestry system, that they need also to have some connectivity with the downstream business. So, in the forestry system as well, and I try to look more deeper in the forest policy in our development plan. And as you might be aware, that the forestry will be strengthened then under the development of forest management unit through the whole forest areas. And I think that one of the important part of the FMU activities is actually agroforestry, because probably you might be aware that we don't have any good forest management at the site level, but then we expect that with the establishment of this forest management unit at the site level, it will enhance the opportunity of the agroforestry activity. It's like a close collaborations between FMU and also with the farmers. And so in this opportunity, I also would like to at least five aspects that I would like to suggest for all of you that might be interest for your research in the future. First, what we have seen so far, that many agroforestry is treated as a kind of project interventions. So we still questions about the sustainability of the project interventions. This is one of I think one of the aspects that we need to dig more upon. How then the sustainability of interventions from outside that can be sustainable. So then the second one, because I only see one agroforestry word in the development plans, I believe that the agroforestry researchers or community like all of you, I think need to work together to enhance the understanding of the top policymakers as well. So then,
but that's why we invited you here.
It's not only me, probably. And I expect that this can be mainstream into the development plan. So, like a case in the climate change, once it is mainstream in the development plan, so then it will be easier then for the country then to adopt the system. And of course, it's not only at the top level, but also we need to encourage our counterpart at the local level as well, the local governments and so on. And again, the third one, as I mentioned before, there has to be a very close linkage between agroforestry and agrobusiness and agro-industry at the rural area, and this is also stated in our development plan, and it should be focused in improving productivity of our agriculture's products and forest value added. And the fourth one, because as I mentioned as well before, that because we would like to establish FMUs across forest areas, we have targeted 600 FMUs to be established, and it will be based on the site level. So then this is the opportunity for agroforestry as well to be involved in the FMU activities. And last but not least, because this is the era of carbon, what do you call it? Carbon, not carbon, no. Low carbon development. Yeah, green economy, low carbon development, like or dislike, we have to be, we need to link this agroforestry system with this issue, because this is big opportunity provided through this low carbon development. I think that's all from me, Ravi.
Thank you very much, Pa. Look forward to the discussions, which I'm sure will be interesting. Tony?
Okay, thanks Ravi for inviting me to join this distinguished panel this morning. Well, the panel's this afternoon, you invited me this morning. Okay, so Indonesia and in this region, very important to Australia as a donor, along with Papua New Guinea, two very important countries for forestry and forestry research. Both have agroforestry and commercial forestry interests at their core, and ACR has been supporting research in both those countries for pretty well all of the 30 years, a bit more than 30 years that ACR has been in existence. And there's still more research challenges, lots more actually. Sustainable development goals, I confess, I learned more this morning about sustainable development goals than I have for a long time. So, and why? Because actually in my job on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't make much difference to me. However, having been involved in UN forest policy dialogue processes for a bit over 10 years before I joined ACR, and going through all those negotiation processes, for instance, if you look in the non-legally binding instrument on forests, realising how difficult it was to get us to agree on what do we mean by sustainable forest management, I actually think that it's good that the global community can debate and reach agreement on something as complex as Sustainable Development Goals. Will they make any difference? Well, let's hope so. Will they bring any more money? Maybe. Maybe not too. Probably, more likely, maybe not, based on past experience. Will they bring opportunities? I think so. And that's perhaps what we need to think about. Agroforestry really, in my mind, well, first of all, agroforestry, I'm looking at this in the context of everything from a few trees on some farmland right up to quite commercial systems managed by smallholders and small enterprises and so on, and then right into the value chains, processing non-timber forest products and timber products and all those things. That whole system is all connected and integrated and very important. So I see that those actually, when you think about the globe, we heard about the challenges this morning, and one of the issues is the land base isn't getting any bigger, even with respect to Miney and Netherlands, not really getting any bigger. A lot of degraded lands, clearly, some of those maybe can be brought back into production, some maybe not. But this concept of integrating trees with other land uses, particularly agriculture, I think is fundamental to improving the well-being of both the planet and humans on the planet. ACR, which has been funding forestry research for about 32 years now, 75% of all of our investments over that whole period, more than 100 completed projects now, have been on smallholder forestry, including agroforestry projects and commercial end of that, that spectrum as well. And that's predated the Rio Convention. We haven't wavered from that level of investment. So in terms of what's important to us as an investor, I see that's being front and centre for the foreseeable future anyway. So what should you focus on? Well, I think there's still clearly lots that we don't know and about how to make all this work in terms of agroforestry, and therefore there is a good need to do more research. I think some of the things I heard this morning, I agree it's very important to have a high-level strategic focus in terms of the research so that you can demonstrate both how to make a difference globally, but also having that enriched with the detail from the research from local situations, because things vary a lot around the planet. Being able to be flexible and come up with systems that can adapt as they go along, very important to do research on that. And I think it's also very important to look for more and more opportunities to link with the private sector. When I said, will it bring any more money, I find it hard to see where the governments are going to find more money to invest. Maybe they will, I don't know, but there's always been a lot of talk on that. The private sector, however, is the area where they bring the pull. So where you've got good outcomes from agroforestry systems, whether it's cocoa-based ones or whatever, or right up to people growing acacias and other trees like teak for commercial purposes, when they link up to the markets and there's a market pull with a growing demand for all these products in many countries, that's where we get more traction for take-up of these technologies, in my view. Just to finish, I think clearly there are a lot of factors that come into play in terms of what will make a difference about the Sustainable Development Goals. And you need good knowledge, available technologies, capacity to implement them, partnerships and a few other things. But research is fundamental. So the key thing I think you've got to do if you want to make a bigger splash in this pond of SDGs is you've got to be able to do good research and then champion the success stories. Tell people about why this works. They're my few thoughts.
From the ministries and also from masyarakat adat and Aman, yeah. So I think without all this, ICRAF will not able to make any impacts on the ground. Will not be able to make any influence in the policies. So I think it's crucial, it's instrumental to have the support of you all. And perhaps I would like as well to introduce ICRAF Indonesia a little bit. I think perhaps maybe not all of you know. So our program in Indonesia basically trying to put in the agenda that agroforestry is about providing goods but as well as services at least 3 different scales. One is at the plot level, as you mentioned about the production system, so how agroforestry can actually support the livelihood of people, community, indigenous people, smallholder farmers. I think there's a lot of evidences on that through our research for so many years in Indonesia, in different parts of Indonesia, basically. And then the second one is how agroforestry, as part of the landscape, as part of the integrated landscape, can provide goods as well as services. We have shown in many of our publications how agroforestry actually can support as habitat of many different forest tree species, many different species of birds, of bats, pollinators, etc. And also how much agroforestry as part of the landscape can actually provide the buffer functions of the watershed as part of the bigger landscape. As well, we also starting to see and to analyze how agroforestry as part of the economic sectors, especially from land-based, that can as well be the input to other economic sectors, can also support the regional economics as a whole. And also at the national level, we have been part of the debate of how agroforestry as, again, part of the landscape can also contribute to low carbon economy, and also how agroforestry can actually contribute to the debate of how the tenurial system in Indonesia can be reviewed, can be percepted, basically. So those are the 3 scales of where we have been working on. There has been several projects that has been funded by multiple donors, and we have been working actually throughout Indonesia. And if you are familiar with the forest transition stage theory, basically we have been working in the areas of frontier areas, like for example from Papua, of which forest cover is still high, the human development index is the lowest perhaps in the country, up to the level of up to the areas of Java that you have been seeing, and yesterday in the field trip you see a little bit the transect, the gradient between the urban until the peri-urban areas of Java, of which the population density is very high. So Indonesia is very the heterogeneity is very high spatially. So between Java as the extreme and Papua as another extreme, we also have been working in different in many gradients of that. Yeah. So basically, this work also we have been working on the cross-cutting issues in terms of tenure with the pioneering work of Mas Gamaludra and Pak Martua and Chief Fei in the past when they were still with ICRAF. Actually, we have been making progress as well in clarifying how tenure can be appraised rapidly and how it can be used actually to negotiate actually how indigenous people can have can be inclusively managing the landscape. And also as a cross-cutting issue, gender has been high up in our agenda. How the roles of the women and men are differentiated up from the production system in the agroforestry system to the marketing system. We actually have been really working actively on that. So basically, I heard from the expectation and the suggestion from all the partners here, and we will really take note and try to address that carefully. Some of them we have been addressing that, some of them we need to work further on that. And perhaps I also would like to have my short wish list here to our partners here. Especially, we have made some impacts at the local level, at the areas where we selected carefully, such that this area is representing the heterogeneity in Indonesia. So we would like, as well as try to collaborate with you to make these stories or these success stories or the lessons learned be heard more at the national level, such that the uptake to the policy and also the extrapolation, the replicability can be ensured, because ICRAF is small. In Indonesia, we perhaps only have 70, 75 researchers, so we actually can work as much as what we work now, but in order to make a wider impact, of course, we rely on you. Yeah. So actually, there is a very nice example of which Bapenas has been endorsing one of the tools that we have developed here to be used at the nationwide for the provincial level process in terms of producing their action plan for mitigating climate change. So I think this is one of the examples, and we would like to see more. And for sure, we would like to see Pak Medril for the next 5 or 10 years to see more than one word. Maybe if in each of that 3 textbooks there's one word in agroforestry, then we will be happy. It's 300% increase already. But I would like also to say that at the province level, beyond the national level, of which the implementation is close to the ground, actually the process that we have been having with the provincial level government, they always, agroforestry is always coming up as one of the mitigation action potential that they identified. So I think that there is a progress to be made, but I think we are getting there. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sonia. Thanks for also. We've talked about 20 years of work in Indonesia by ICRAF, but Ford has been working on agroforestry, and yet agroforestry is one word. But if you listen to Pa Abdon, well, agroforestry has been part of the traditional system forever, thousands of years. So it's been there, but it's still not making its impact. And what I would like us to think a little bit about is, I think there are different perceptions of what agroforestry is. I think there's a perception of agroforestry as perhaps something that could be done around conservation areas within FMUs. So it's a minor intervention. But it's also your cup of coffee or cup of tea in the morning. It's your cup of chocolate or bar of chocolate at the end of the day. It's your rice, it's your wheat. I think we need to understand what that means. So there's a real perception challenge that I'm seeing. And I think that's something that we really need to debate. Are we pulling at the wrong end? Are the levers that we are trying to research the wrong ones? What is the national scalable case on agroforestry, and why aren't we getting to it? But that's not what I'm going to challenge you with at the moment. I'm sure you prepared your thoughts before you heard this. So, Ibu RMB, please, the floor is yours. For the next 4 to 5 minutes, share your thoughts, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just got an invitation last night just to answer 3 questions. I drove 2 hours from Jakarta to here just to say yes. Agroforestry has strong relationship with the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. At least in my point of view, among the 17 goals from SDGs, agroforestry, whatever that means, traditional, the one that you debate, at least it has directly linked to the 2 goals, goals number 1 and goals number 2. Number 1, the end poverty in all forms. And I'm not sure, maybe other speaker has discussed about it. At least around 20-30 million people in Indonesia dependent on the forestry sectors. So it's really linked with the end of poverty. But again, the problem on ending poverty in Indonesia has been 20 years ago, more than that, still on the debate whether it's ending or no. But at least if we are going to the proper way, the proper path, I believe that the goal number 1 on SDGs would be strongly linked with the agroforestry. Second is the goal number 2 to end hunger and also food security and promote sustainable agriculture. I think that it's also the main role for agroforestry. As I believe, agroforestry, my belief, is not only monoculture. In my point of view, the monoculture in Indonesia is destroying the forest sector, and also all the livelihood in the forest sector. Secondly, at least there are 2 goals that are indirectly related to the agroforestry. Goals number 13, I think that's been discussed. Is the like for combating climate change and its impact. Again, the forest sector in Indonesia has a strong role in combating climate change in Indonesia. Other than, of course, other than the water and also the maritime issue. The third goal number 15, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem and sustainable managed forests, is indirectly linked with agroforestry. So, agroforestry is very important in SDGs. It's kind of, for me, it's like a block in the system of the human being. If you lose the forest and all the culture within the forest, I think it's hard to achieve the SDGs goals. Of course, as a human being in the world, we face that before SDGs we have MDGs, and all for Indonesia and also many parts of the world. Not all the countries achieve the MDGs goals, and then after that we have SDGs. If you would like to be more positive, maybe agroforestry would be one main base for achieving SDGs. And I really do hope that having experience with MDGs, we have experience with MDGs and the success and the fall, I think agroforestry would be lead for success in SDGs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
But let me piggyback on my sister's point here about the importance of SDGs as I begin my brief intervention here on the discussion we've been having. Before you came on board, Ravi had posited the issue of what's the role? How can research really contribute to our ability to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? As an agricultural research center, we are an agroforestry research center, I thought that was a very interesting and a useful question. We all recognize that there is a history to the whole debate around Sustainable Development Goals. It started with the Millennium Development Goals. We know that there were key global actors who saw that in spite of the improvements in people's livelihoods, in incomes globally since 50 years back, moving on in developing parts of the world, that there still remain huge disparities between North and South, huge disparities between countries, huge disparities between communities. So obviously there is a problem. And the problem is if we are going to move towards a more livable world, we need to ensure that that inherent difference or inequity is addressed. But in terms of the key goals that were initially identified when the discussions around Millennium Development Goals started. And we saw how, 10 years on, those problems continue to hang around. And that's the whole discussion around sustainable development goals. That in spite of the fact that improvements are happening, they're not equitable. They don't seem to be across the board. And so action, the sustainable development goals, is all about action. But the precautionary principle, we all know that action that is not informed by evidence can be as dangerous as no action at all. So the precautionary principle is understanding what the problem is before we intervene. And as we all know, three of the pernicious problems that have been identified in the whole debate around the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals have to do with poverty. That we have huge populations that still continue to wallow in poverty. Huge populations that do not seem to have a measurable evidence that they're able to feed themselves, food security. But it's no longer just about food security, it is also about nutrition security. Because even in developing parts of the world, we want kids and we want adults to be fed, but we want kids to have the cognitive capacities to be able to stand like all other young adults in the world and contribute to change through very high cognitive capacities. And nutrition plays a key role in that. But it is also a continuing problem is about natural resource management. So those are the three key pernicious challenges. We know there are many others that are embedded in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Agroforestry, as a science, we recognize, certainly does have a role to play. It's a land, agroforestry itself is a land use system that deals, it's an integrative, transdisciplinary science that addresses not just the poverty issue, not just the food and nutrition security, but also the environmental sustainability, the natural resource that we all depend on, that populations depend on to be able to produce food, to have access to food, and to be able to have viable incomes. We recognize those three. But without thoughtful evidence that takes forward actions, we are in danger. I believe that one of the points I would like to raise here is that we have a room full of thoughtful, very robust, very thoughtful, reflective scientists who are very good at using the science we have all been socializing, the Cartesian science, to look at landscape issues, to look at ecological issues, to look at climate issues from the standpoint of the objective science that we've all been socializing. But we recognize that the context within which that science have to be translated into action is a very murky, very contested, very fuzzy context. My focus is going to be on the importance of looking at science from a pluralistic standpoint. That the hegemony, there has been historically a hegemony of our conventional science. And it has helped us to come up with very robust knowledge, very robust evidence. But when that is applied in context, we fear that there will be serious limits to the ability of that knowledge, the tools that are generated, to really transform the context in the way we hope that we're able to transform them through our agroforestry science. So looking at the role of knowledge in a complex, pluralistic standpoint, I think is one of the opportunities I want to put here on the table as a discussion to take forward. It is not just about the fact that the local knowledge on the ground is important. It is also about the fact that knowledge itself has actors that are diverse. The knowledge as is interpreted on the ground by farmers in their context, men, women, different ethnic groups, different indigenous populations. Knowledge is situated. That knowledge that we've talked about quite a bit in the past few days, that in addition to scientific knowledge, our boundary presentation, talked quite a bit about the importance of local knowledge. But we need to recognize that that local knowledge itself is as complex as the society within which, or the context within which that knowledge is generated. So understanding that knowledge is complex, is pluralistic, and ensuring that it is intersected with the normal, the conventional knowledge to inform practice, I think moves our interventions in contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals closer to it being relevant. We've also understood that there are institutions in place that need to be understood if knowledge has to be linked to policy. We've got to understand that as well. So what's the role of understanding community institutions, national institutions, to also inform agroforestry action is just as critical. And I just want to quickly foreground the importance of that social science dimension to our knowledge that then contributes to agroforestry practice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margaret. So, you've been a great audience, you've been extremely patient. We've heard a lot of really interesting things, but now's your turn. Yeah, gentlemen here, please say your name and
for important information, but I go back to what Sonia told about the transition theory. Have we totally forgotten it? Can countries learn from each other when it comes to land and forest ownership? You know, different countries solve the problems at different times. Forest ownership in Finland, which was part of Sweden, was solved more than 200 years ago, when all forest was given to full ownership of local people. Can you imagine? All forest that was in inhabited areas. So there are similarities in development, but things take place at different times. Can we learn from that? This is my question.
And that's a brilliant model for intervention. So please follow Olavi's example, especially on thin ice.
My name is Mol Tantra. I'm from Green Forest, actually a private company. So I have two questions, one for the indigenous people Aman and one for the Forda. On the Aman side, indigenous people, I think what you say is right, but the problem is that after 98, for example, after decentralization of Indonesia, it's worse for forests. There are more degradation. So when power was given to a lower and lower people who are not mature enough, right? What will prevent you to say businessmen come to the indigenous people and want to buy law from them without any regulation at all, because it's no longer a state forest? Right? That's one question. For Forda, there's a lot of frustration on HPH, especially people who are on HPH hutan alam, natural forest utilization. Monoculture plantation is preferred, okay, from taxation standpoint, provision standpoint. Indonesia had its number one in mangrove forest, 23%, yet further research on mangrove is almost none, right? And the dana reboisasi that we have to pay, the reforestation fund, it's never used for reforestation anyway, right? So there's a lot of frustration. And now, with the new rules that says you have to tag every tree, put barcode in every tree, do 100% cruising. Yeah, and there's a lot of rules that come out that just does not make sense, that prevent natural forest people, natural forest, sustainably developed, as sustainably managed natural forests. We cannot make money anymore, right? It's not helpful.
Thank you. That's exactly provoked thought. So we'll go. Yeah.
Okay. Johan Kieft, Human Office, the United Office for Red Coordination in Indonesia. But I would like to basically, this is a little bit of frustration I have personally, is that actually what you see in Indonesia in particularly on Java, but in NBT, even in parts of Kalimantan, is that you have quite a lot of partly fueled by urbanization that formerly marginal Sweden food producing systems are moving towards some state of production forest, particularly for teak, sengong, and those type of trees. But as well, I think in the case of Central Kalimantan, the Melaleuca forests are an interesting aspect of that work. This has, in my opinion, is actually landscape-wide changes which are happening as we speak and actually have gained significant momentum, are often not that well researched and not paid attention they should have. Because if you look now in the context of Java, the impact these stages might have on environmental services, thus on the ability of Indonesia to meet its SDG targets in going from not only look at food but also at water, I think it's not well understood. So I would like to have more your opinion on it and see what you see, how you can better incorporate it in the research agenda. I know ICR is doing some work on it, but given should it not be given more prominence than it does now?
Thank you very much, Johan.
I turn sad because I see much less street there. So my question is to ICRAF, I believe that agroforestry plays a lot of a big role in Java. We bring it to other islands. I learned in one project's preparations that agroforestry can have an IRR of 25%. So it's going to be promoted in the particular project through the forest management unit, as the distinguished speaker from Bangladesh mentioned, that the forest development will be pushed through the KPH and forest management unit. So what has been done, how much effort is being made to mainstream agroforestry successes through the KPH, the forest management units. We see the units heads are now developing the business plan, and they are looking for such ideas. So I propose that we do more on it. Thank you.
So, sorry, I just
kind of thinking on how can we move from this degraded scenario towards a more green scenario for the future. General thinking, in my view, is that private sector is seen as panacea, but in reality is that in several countries of Africa, they have been the main reason of degradation, and the collusion between some of the governments which are not well functioning and private sector can even speed it up. So can we rethink scenarios like that? Thank you.
Decentralizations fail. So what options we have? Of course, the only options is community. What does it mean? Devolutions, not decentralizations. Because centralizations of the government is still government. They only replicate what centralized government did when they get power from the centralized policy. So, but the question is, if the power, the authority now become in the hand of the peoples, what we can do with the peoples? That's the question to ICRAF, to all of us. Yeah. There is an opportunity to have that. Yeah. Now we're working with the national parliaments and the office of the presidents to have new law on indigenous peoples. The question is how we put these rights in the law. For example, Amans really want there is no individualizations of land in indigenous territory. Why? Because if there is certifications based on individual rights, free market, land, free market will come to the peoples. The businessmen will come directly to people. That will also create problems for our environment. So let's think about how to empower peoples, because we know centralized governments, decentralized governments, both of them is failing. I think that's the challenge to agroforestry researcher right now. That's our challenge.
Thank you, Pak Abdul. Yeah, Pak Menteri.
Thank you, Rafi. I don't want to be trapped with the issue of centralized or decentralizations, but what happened actually on the field that on the site, if you see the forest areas that we don't have any authority in there. At the site level, we don't have any authority at all from the previous past, from the previous times. What we have only in the national park, yes, we have management there, right on the site level. But in the production forest, in particular protected forest, no management at all at the site level. So that's why right now, of course, if there's no management at the site level, who can hold the communities then to enter the forest area? I don't blame the communities there because, of course, they have the right to exploit the forest because it's their surrounding environment and so on. But so that's why right now the government tried to push hard to implement the forest management unit concepts at the site level. We very strongly push our colleague here on the right, my right side, that no FMUs, no budget, very strongly, because we believe that FMU is the top solutions to bridge the gap between decentralization, centralization, in particular, in managing the forest area. And this is also, we believe that one of the solutions, in particular for the conflict, in conflict area, and perhaps agroforestry can be a channel, as I can say as a forum, or as activities. Close collaborations with the FMU and communities and the forest and agroforest areas, so then they can work together at the site level. And we expect that this can contribute to sustainable forest areas.
But just a question, is it conceivable that you would give agroforestry FMU concessions and, you know, as we look at the laws emerging, give it to a community? So, you know, we use the existing structures, we recognize in a zoning, which, you know, Forda will help us and maybe Basonia will help us, but we say, let us give this as an agroforestry concession, not just in the degraded land, but also land which has some value, and it is given to a community to manage as an FMU concession.
That's one of the main objectives.
Thank you, Pa. I think that deserves a big hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe that Robert Kiyosaki, rich dad, poor dad. So that means that the right to manage, not the right to possess or to have the lands. Local people should be equipped with the management capacity and infrastructure and technology and standard of operating, how to utilize the lands. Not to distribute, only to distribute them, but to equip them to manage the land. That's about the philosophy of the evolution of forest decentralization. As I agree with you that now decentralization becomes worse and worse in terms of the forest condition because of that lack of expertise and lack of guidance to the local people. So this is my comments about the situation now. This forest decentralization becomes worse and worse in terms of the forest condition. I believe that about the forest transition, CRP6 forestry transition. I believe that in the future, in the long run, I think in some parts of area, the forest becomes better and better in terms of the forest cover. Like in Java, like Dr. Teguh mentioned that now the private forest there is better and better and to provide timber for domestic market. So I don't have any idea about the Finland situation about the 200 years ago, the private forest. In the Indonesian situation, I think it's a bit different, but I think we approach to that situation in terms of to give access to the people to manage the forest and to get the benefits from forest and to get the better livelihood from the forest resources. So about the forest conservation areas, yeah, I think that it's a matter of violating the system. I think in the past that we don't follow the regulation of 11 steps of how to sustain the natural production forest. So it fails, and then now the forest becomes open access. And then we change now to the restoration ecosystem, forest conservation to overcome worse condition. So this good strategy from the government for the open access, the failed forest conservation areas to forest restoration conservation areas. So there are now 14 conservation restoration ecosystem areas in Indonesia already exist. So that's from the natural production forest. I think we got a lot of values from that, intrinsic values and also polyvalent values. But we compare to monoculture, of course, like as I mentioned before, that we have to consider sharing the productive landscape instead of sparing the landscape into like a monoculture with a high technology, but very sometimes make a social unrest and social entropy to the people around near the forest. So I believe that in forest conservation areas is better to provide forest services, forest products, and also non-timber forest products. So, but based on the evidence, we have to, I think, consider about the evidence-based theory. Now, our Indonesian forest condition, some parts of forest areas already destroyed and disturbed. Now we have to apply the right management prescription. For instance, for the sharp land, we can convert it to timber plantation and apply agroforestry in the wild land and also unproductive forest. And also we can apply also agroforestry not only in a timber plantation, but also in the natural forest and restoration ecosystem, also in forest management units KPHP, production forest management unit, also forest protection, forest management unit, and also conservation. We can get a lot of benefits from that. We can apply agroforestry things in the forest area. Thank you very much.
Thanks, it's a very hopeful message. There was one outstanding question to you, I think, Tony, here.
It was about the research priority for understanding the impact of the trees on water, I think.
Yeah, particularly on private lakes.
Yeah, okay.
On Java.
Well, should we do research on that? Of course. Understanding the impacts of changing landscapes is quite important, especially when water is such an important issue. Will we do it? Well, that really depends on the priorities. ACR always works on undertaking research according to the priorities requested by the partner countries. So, and there's always more priorities than there is funding for projects. That's a challenge. But I've just been travelling in Central Java before I came here, looking at teak agroforestry systems by farmers and Senyon also. And one thing that's striking to me as a forester is that there are far too many trees there that aren't needed actually. But the farmers plant these trees, often using poor germplasm because it's easy, cheap, free. And then when you ask them, well, actually, you could get more if you thin out these trees, they don't want to cut the trees because they think every tree has some value. Why cut it? So I think what that shows us is that we don't, as technical scientist type people, we don't fully understand the thinking of the farmers and how to actually take on board their views and find a way that achieves the objectives that they want and we think is needed to improve the whole, both the financial performance of the system, the environmental performance of the system. But that's why I said at the start of my talk, I still think there's a lot of research to be done to optimize these systems.
Thank you. And you'll realize, ladies and gentlemen, that we've taken a little bit more time. But, you know, Ujwal, who helped greatly to prepare this session, and standing there, kindly came up and said, you have a bit more time. So we have that time, and we've used it. It's been a good panel discussion, and it's been great questions from the audience. Thank you for being such a fantastic audience and a great panel. We've heard a lot of things, and, you know, one of the things that we were hearing last was the importance of regulation. Now, you know, a lot of the panel members have driven up here from Jakarta, and many of you have been on that road as well, on any road actually. And you know, when you look on the road, you can see, regulations. How many people are actually following regulations? So you know, I think what we need to think about very much more is what are the incentives? How do people make decisions? Whether it's the decision maker who then prepares for the session and says, let me look for agroforestry. Oops, thank goodness there's at least one agroforestry mentioned. So how do we change those decisions? How do we change the decisions of the farmers? How do we change your decisions, researchers in this room, so that you are more relevant to the, you know, the many, many great challenges tossed out by this panel? And how do we make the SDGs more relevant to our work, and our work more relevant to the SDGs? I thank the panel very sincerely for coming, sharing your time and thoughts, challenging us. I believe we have a great evening in front of us, and you know, I'm told the stage is going to be required by much more important people than any of us. So in closing, thank you very much. Thank you all of you.